Well, yippee-ki-yay, that was Wood and Wire doing a rip-roaring version of their original song, Rollin' in the Washingtons. And I love the way that Carol McDuffie was able to capture that video at Merlefest and how it included the story behind the song at the beginning. And I think it really showed off how hot the pickin' is in that band. They're really making a big name for themselves. And like they mentioned, they're from Texas, not to be confused with a band called Wire in the Wood, who are from Michigan. And Michigan is really a hotbed of 21st century bluegrass. That's where Green Sky Bluegrass is from, and that's also where a guy who appeared 3 times in that set comes from, Billy Strings. And personally, the number one name I think of when I think of the future of bluegrass is Billy Strings. He's got the charisma, the chops, and everything else that it takes to take his music wherever he wants to. And personally, I'm just excited to go along for the ride. Now, like I mentioned, he's actually on 3 songs on that set, because I picked not only 2 songs from his most recent album, Turmoil and Tinfoil, I also picked a song off his partner in crime banjo player Billy Failing's awesome new album, Calling My Trouble by Name. And I wanted to highlight Billy Failing because he's an incredible banjo player and he's a really good singer and songwriter in his own right. And I like the way you can hear Billy Strings doing the harmony vocals on that song, and then you hear Billy Failing doing the backup on the other 2. And especially on that live video from Music City Roots of the song While I'm Waiting Here, you can see their awesome chemistry as well as Billy's outrageous stage style. And I think that both these songs really show off Billy Strings' incredible songwriting as well. While I'm Waiting Here is told from the perspective of a prisoner who is writing a letter to his lost love, hoping to hear from her, which would exonerate him, because in the end we find out that he's actually in jail because of her murder, possibly. But it's really left ambiguous, and I like the way that this is almost like a 2017 style of a murder ballad, because you don't really know, did he actually do it? It's kind of like a mystery. It leaves it nice and ambiguous for the listener to determine for themselves. Now, the feelings expressed in the other song, Dealing Despair, are definitely not ambiguous, but it's another 2017 take on what could traditionally be thought of as a murder ballad in bluegrass. Historically, bluegrass musicians love to write incredibly detailed songs about killing people who do them wrong, especially lovers. But in Billy Strings' song here, he's actually gone a different route and just talks about what it would feel like to actually give in to your hatred and anger inside you and blow out somebody's brains. But he's not actually talking about doing it. And that's the big difference between a murder ballad in 2017 versus a murder ballad in the past. But either way, what a murder ballad really is someone dealing with these awful feelings inside of them. And that's what Billy is really able to capture with a wisdom that is way beyond his 25 years. And I really want to congratulate Billy on being included in the 2018 Telluride Bluegrass Festival lineup. That's a really big deal, and I'm really glad to see it. I'm also really glad to see that he's on Green Sky Bluegrass's awesome New Year's Eve run in Chicago. And of course, I'm super excited to see that Billy is once again returning to Cumberland, Maryland at Delfest. And I'll have a link to the full lineup down in the description here. And actually, next time, I think we might dedicate the whole episode to the new Delfest lineup. And that means you're also going to be hearing more from Twisted Pine, the band that followed Billy Strings. And I was supremely excited to see them included in the lineup because I actually just found out about them a few weeks ago as I was putting together this playlist. They were actually another one of the bands recommended by Joe Depp. And I'm really digging everything about them. They kind of remind me of almost like a bluesier version of the Rail Splitters. And while I dug their entire self-titled album, Twisted Pine, it was an obvious choice to pick When I Called Your Name. I just really love the pace of it and the way the mandolin and the fiddle just trade back and forth awesomeness the whole time on top of amazing vocals and songwriting. And I followed that up with the Show Ponies, the song Folks Back Home off their album It All Goes Down. And I thought that was a really fitting song for this episode because it talks about coming back home and having to justify how fulfilling that a life full of experiences as opposed to money and things can really be. And I think that's something that everybody who really loves music and loves going to shows can relate to having to do at some point in their life. And if you pay super close attention, there's actually just the tiniest reference to one of my all-time favorite Christmas stories. Now, we followed that up with another kind of Christmas story from Jody Moser, the dobro player for Grand Old Ditch. You see, the other night on Christmas Eve at the Purple Fiddle in Thomas, West Virginia, and I was able to catch Jody telling the origin story of his new song, First Last Day of Summer. And I was actually in the RV he referenced when he wrote the song back at Deep Roots Mountain Revival. So here's just the tiniest little clip of Jody with my friend Clint Novinger's banjo writing that song. Pretty cool, right? And then he went on to extrapolate that into the full song. And then in 2017, the new lineup of Grand Old Ditch made it the first song that they went in the studio and recorded. And on my Spotify playlist, I have the single version, and I got a link in the description here. But that's actually also going to be included on a brand new EP the band is working on. They've already recorded about 7 or 8 songs at South Branch Studios on the banks of the Potomac in Green Spring, West Virginia. And they debuted a few of those songs at the Fiddle, and I gotta say, they're really incredible, and I can't wait for everyone else to hear them and see where it takes the future of Grand Old Ditch in 2018. So from the mountains of West Virginia, we went to the mountains of North Carolina with Wood and Wire at Merlefest. And now, in the last set of part 2 of the Future in Bluegrass, let's go out to the Rocky Mountains and then get high on Pennsylvania Bluegrass on Bill's Bluegrass Breakdown.